Welcome to the Realizations Podcast. I'm Andrea Gordon, your host, and I'm excited to explore the world of real estate with you. In a world where perceptions often overshadow reality, Realizations seeks to redefine what it means to be a realtor. Join me as we peel back the layers of the industry, uncovering inspiring stories and celebrating the good in real estate. Whether you're a homeowner, a fellow realtor, or simply curious, this podcast is for you. Welcome to Realizations, where perceptions meet reality. Let's dive right in. Welcome, everyone, to Realizations, the podcast where we talk about literally everything real estate oriented. And it's part of my drive to educate the American public about how complicated it actually is to be a real estate agent in this day and age, and what all is involved, and why you should take your realtor seriously. Anyway, welcome Tabatha Petersen to the show. Tabitha, hello.
Hello.
So Tabitha is with Green Couch, which is a premier staging company in the Bay Area. They do incredible, amazing work. I'm closing escrow on Tuesday on a house that was listed at around $3 million for around $3 million. And their beautiful, amazing staging was the reason why the house looked so damn good and why people just had to come and get it and had to buy it. So thank you for being here. I was really impressed by the work that you guys did. Do you have a design degree? How do you know how to do all this stuff?
I do not have a design degree, but I have a lot of passion for design. We do have designers that work on our team. They've been doing this for years. Some of them did go to school for design, but our principal, Jeff, he started this company 22 years ago, and he does fantastic work. He really leads charge with, our design eye trends, things that we want to implement. And we're always reinventing what we're doing with design. We want to always stay on top of it.
Okay. Well, I have a really weird question, but why is it called Green Couch? That was a question I had as long as I've known you guys.
Sure. So when our principal was concepting this staging company, he happened to be sitting on a green couch. And that one stuck for him, and here we are.
Okay.
And it was a very beautiful green couch, might I add. It was a velvet, gorgeous love seat. And we still have it today in the warehouse.
Oh, that is funny as hell. Yeah. Yeah. I imagined that it was velvet somehow.
Yes.
And green, most people have an association with green, with money, with fecundity and verdant spring nature. So I can understand why they might say that.
Yes.
Very, very cool. So, one of the things that was really interesting to me about the staging that you did at this particular house was the amount of furniture that you placed in each room, which was actually we had the house on the market before, and there was a trajectory to this house. We'd had it on for about, I want to say even 6 months. We were at a much higher price. I must also say we were at 3.5 million.
Okay.
And the staging was so beige and so sparse that it felt kind of, I want to say dead is the best way of describing it. There wasn't a lot of life energy. Everything was black and white or beige or clear. And it just felt like if you walked in there, you were going into a museum or something. And one of the things I loved about the staging that you did was, although there were a lot of neutral colors, you actually weren't frightened of color in artwork, in accoutrement, and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about your use of color and use of color in design trends right now?
Yeah. So I will say, a lot of people are looking for those very neutral whites, creamies. We definitely get a lot of people asking for that.
Mm-hmm.
What's great about your seller and your listing was you guys wanted more than that. And we showed up with our colors, our dark colors,
Right.
patterns, lots of layering. And I think that's something that really sets us apart from the competition. We've always been known to be a little more forward with the fun design aspect. We're not afraid of color. We've got beautiful art pieces. We've got great patterns, great fabrics. So we do have, the neutrals if somebody wants it, but if someone says, yes, let's play, we're here for it.
Well, that's very, very cool. Yeah, no, it was an interesting thing for me because the amount of life energy that came into the space because of the furniture and the artwork, what have you, that you used, I think really showed the space off. Also, just in terms of Berkeley being Berkeley, Berkeley is colorful. Berkeley is brown shingle, old school, you know, Oriental rugs, beautiful Ben Shahn coffee table books on the glass, yeah, what is that? Iguchi, what is the name of that table? That everybody,
Gucci.
yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, there's something about the sophistication and the feel of something being educated and very intellectually stimulating that happens when you have books and you have artifacts from different places in the
Sure.
world. There's just a feeling of Berkeley is the best way of describing it. And you guys captured that. If you were to be staging in an ultra modern penthouse in a condo complex with gray cement walls or what have you, do you have enough in your warehouse to address all of the different needs of the different kinds of styles of houses that you might come into?
Absolutely. Like I said, we've been in business for 22 years. We have two warehouses and we've got a nice assortment of most types of styles. I think also what's important is when we are doing that initial walkthrough,
Mhm.
is to talk to whether it's the realtor or the seller,
Mhm.
what is it that you're looking for? If you're asking us to do a farmhouse style, we might not be able to accomplish quite that. Or,
Mhm.
going in a
No
all
shabby chic.
shabby chic or mid-century modern completely. We've got a nice assortment of a lot of things, but we tend to layer everything in nicely, with a lot of different looks and styles.
Mhm.
And that kind of helps work for the masses, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not too pointed one way.
It's funny. People don't really understand staging that much. Staging is a simulacrum of life. So you walk into the house, and rather than having just a stark, empty space, a lot of people don't even understand how to utilize space. Like I had this one incredibly brutalist mid-century house in Kensington a long time ago, and the house was so convoluted that half of the people who came to the open houses kept walking into the closet thinking they were walking out the front door. I'm not kidding you. I finally had to put a note on the door that said, "This is not the front door," because it was getting comical. And so sometimes people need a little nudge to understand how you use a space or how versatile a space could be. Like a lot of times, I'll see houses that are set up where there's a kids room. You don't have to do just a kids room. You can do a guest room. You can go do an office. You can show that it could be a den combination exercise room. There are a lot of different things you can do with space. And if you
Yes.
help somebody along in their imagination when they're looking at the house, they are able to more, fulfill their own imagination about what it would be like to live in that house. Because that's the whole point of staging. It's a word that comes from theater, because it is theater. It's
Yeah.
helping you understand the story of that house. Now, some people
Andrea,
take it too far.
I will say, in the home that we worked with you on, in the primary suite, I believe there was two large closets. Yeah,
Hmm.
we actually, one of the closets we turned into a small home gym.
Hmm.
Again, reimagining what spaces can be. That could have potentially been just like a small office. I think there was a bedroom in that listing that we ended up turning into a media room, and it really kind of helped people visualize like the space with larger families.
Exactly. And that, it's interesting because the people that bought it actually walked through with their architect, and that rather large room downstairs, they're turning that into two bedrooms.
Okay,
That's
great,
what that's what they needed to have happen there. And it's a huge space, so it's very possible for that to happen.
right.
I have to take a little break actually because I wrote an offer today, and that was the listing agent calling me. And so I want to understand.
Amen. Amen. Do whatever you need to do.
Oh, no. Well, here, real estate in real time, folks. I just wanted to say thank you so much for submitting that, and seller signed a significantly higher offer. I'm so sorry. I knew that would happen. Oh, well.
Oh,
Uh,
next time.
yeah,
Next time.
yeah. Well, I knew going in. The house is 1,600 square feet. My clients offered in the range of 1.4 million. and it was competitive. And in our market, we're going for like between $1,000 and $1,200 dollars a square foot. So it was pretty obvious from the beginning that it was a big long shot. I was just hoping that not all the offers that were supposed to come in were going to come in.
Got it. Got it. Oh,
Way, oh, poor client. I love them so much. Anyway, um, so what I would also say is that staging right now is is going to be difficult for a little while we're having all this economic crap going on in the economy. And to elaborate on that a little bit, all of you know what's going on in the stock market. You all know about the tariffs. You all know about all of the problems that are going to occur with supply chain, what have you, because of the stupid tariffs that shouldn't have ever happened in the first place, because that's how I feel about it. Um, and what a lot of people will start doing, because I've been through 3 of these economic downturns, is they start thinking things like staging are unnecessary. Whereas staging is actually highly necessary because, once again, it makes the place look better, which makes you sell for more money. I just
yes.
wrote an article about it in one of the 2 magazines that I write for. I write for Berkeley Hills Living and Montclair Living. And my article was literally about why staging is so necessary and why it is one of the least expensive things you can do to make your house look better. I mean,
Absolutely.
paint is your very best friend in getting a house ready for the market. Floors are your very best friend in getting a house ready for the market. None of the young people like wall-to-wall carpet. They just don't. All of the old people love it in bedrooms because it keeps their feet warm, but
Yes.
nobody likes it who's like under the age of 50.
Yes.
And the other part of this is staging. Staging can really draw attention to the really wonderful stuff in a house, and it can also draw your eye away from the stuff that's not as wonderful in a house, because stagers actually know that if you take a cabinet and turn it like that, that suddenly the room looks 10 times bigger.
Yes.
You may not know how to do that yourself, but the stager certainly does.
Yes, I do find, most people can't visualize. You and I do this every day. We can
Mhm.
walk into a room and we fully understand where a headboard's going to go, or, that view isn't as bad as you think it is, or a funky floor plan, you can see past that. But really, when we come in, we help you, we partner with you, and we highlight the strengths and we can help overcome some of those challenges.
Right. And, as a realtor, I'm kind of weird in that I trust the people that I work with. I am absolutely certain that you know a hell of a lot more about placement of furniture than I do. So what I do usually is I go and look at the place after the work is done,
Mhm.
but while there's still enough time to make some little tweaks if I absolutely need to have some little tweaks.
Sure.
Um, but the idea, I mean, most of the stagers I know, if the seller insists on being actively heavily involved, will like charge an extra 10%
Mm.
just for the pain in the ass part of it.
Yes. Yeah, I hear ya.
Yeah, because a lot of sellers think they're emotionally attached to their house, and so they can't get over, not doing things the way that they perceive them to be necessary. And, I think that seeing their house in a whole new light is part of the separation process that they almost need in order to emotionally detach from it. But sometimes they can't do that.
We see a mix of that. We do get some that, it's hard for them to let go, and they'll, I had this sitting there, so we need to do the same thing and replicate. And then we have others that they walk in and they're like, well, I don't know if I want to sell the house now. This is like a brand new place.
I don't laugh. That actually happened to me about 20 years ago. I was selling a big, beautiful house, and I paid for the staging up front.
Mhm.
Um, and the morning of the day that I was taking offers, and I had 7 of them, by the way,
Wow. Incredible.
the seller called me and said, "You're going to hate me." And I said, "How could I ever hate you?" And she said, "No, you're really going to hate me. We've been up all night long, and the house finally looks exactly the way we've always hoped that it would, and
Mm.
we're not going to sell."
Wow.
And I was an idiot because I had paid for it up front, and I just assumed she would pay me back. It was a $20,000 staging, and that was 20 years ago. And she never offered to pay me back, and my little Icelandic heart did not actually ask her for the money. And So now every time I drive by that house, I still hate her.
That was a painful lesson for you, huh?
Well, so now what I do as a realtor, sometimes I cover staging, sometimes I don't, but
Sure.
I never cover it up front. I always credit from a closed escrow. If the house doesn't close, I don't pay for it.
Yes,
So,
that definitely makes sense. Well, and some of the other things, the importance of staging, return on investment. I can't tell you how many times that, the house is sold for 200,000 over asking, or
right,
it's sold within a week. Um, you know, Staging creates that emotional connection for prospective buyers coming through. And staging helps your listing stand out. Most prospective buyers find the home on a Zillow or a Redfin. So your
right,
photos need to look their best,
right, right.
right?
Because people are they've actually done studies and buyers look online like 6 months before they actually step out of their house and look at a house.
Yes.
So that's a lot of data that those people have in their heads. When you
Hmm.
think about it, they get to the point where they figured out what they actually like, what works for them. They target neighborhoods, they target looks. And
Yeah,
so if you can meet with what is going on in their imagination about the house that they want online, that's what spurs them to come out of the house and actually go and look at something. So,
sure. And then I know a lot of people were doing the virtual renderings for a while with staging, especially during COVID.
oh, during
And that
COVID,
works.
yeah.
That was really beneficial during a very specific time. But again, you got the virtual staging and then they get to the home and it's like a flop for them.
Oh, it's a big letdown.
Mhm.
The problem with virtual staging is three things. One is just the visual dynamics of it because space is space and virtual is two-dimensional. And
Yeah.
so when you stick a couch in a room that's been photographed, there's always a little something that looks a little bit off. Sort of like the backgrounds that you and I have. Our hair is going like woo, it's that sort of a thing.
Sure.
Same thing with virtual staging. And then when the person goes to the house and opens up that front door and it's just empty and the heat hasn't been on or
Mhm.
whatever, it's a big letdown. You are right. And so it basically turns people off of the house. It does exactly the opposite of what it's supposed to do, I
Right.
would say. Um,
Yes.
so in terms of marketing, um, it's just like realtors need to get the American public to understand that our job is very complex. I don't just negotiate offers like you heard me talking about earlier. I work with stagers, I work with carpenters, I work with floor people, I work with painters, I work with sellers, I work with buyers, I work with finance people, I work with all kinds of people. Same thing happens for stagers. They're working with designers, with painters, with floor people, with
Yes.
a lot of the same people that I work with. They're also wholesale buying furniture. They're knowing where to source things from. Some of them are even designing wallpaper that works perfectly in a space or some
Mhm.
such. There's a lot of complexity to all of this that nobody ever puts any thought into whatsoever while they're out there deciding that they can push a button and buy a house. Um, it's really, really hard to get the American public to understand that, and it's also really hard to get the American public to understand the value of staging.
Yeah. I think being in the Bay area, we have a little bit of a bubble. I
Yes,
do feel very fortunate and lucky living up here. We have, a lot of fabulous clients, a lot of fabulous agents that we work with, and they are strong advocates. I mean, we've got agents that have worked with us since we opened 22 years ago.
right.
But yes, it's having that conversation of, they'll sellers will say, my furniture is fine. And it's like, no, it's too functional, it's too dated. You
Right,
can see the indentation where you sit on the sofa, because your sofa's 20 years old. Um, it's really important to freshen up the space out with the old and with the new, start moving that energy through the home, right?
right, right.
Staging is never too expensive. I think there's also some misconceptions with staging that it all has to be light and bright. Your listing, it doesn't always have to be light and bright.
No,
It
no.
needs to be specific to the home, to the
Mhm.
demographic, and who we're targeting.
Exactly. And, if I had a condo in a building that was largely occupied by 20 somethings, I'm going
Mhm.
to stage something very, very differently than I'm going to
Yes.
stage a house like the house on Arch Street where, it was clearly going to be a very, very sophisticated buyer who was pretty far along in life, but not so far along that they couldn't deal with stairs, etc.
Yes.
So one of the things about staging that I find really fascinating at this point is the whole behind the scenes world of it. My other world when I'm not doing real estate, I work in theater. And to me, staging is commensurate in some ways with backstage at a lot of the theaters that I work at. Because there's an illusion that's involved in staging too. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, you've got like a 5 bedroom empty home, and within 3 to 4 days, it's fully decorated. Where does all this come from?
Right.
There's a lot of thought and design behind the scenes. It's happening, a lot of scrambling sometimes. But
Mhm.
our team is amazing. They work really, really well together. We have like an inventory management system, so we can track and get ahead of it, start planning ahead, things like that.
Do you ever get into a situation where you have so many houses that are staying longer on the market so that your good stuff is stuck in a bunch of houses and you have to go out and buy things, or you actually have to turn down work because of that? Does that happen
Yes,
to you?
yes, and yes. Just like you, we go through our high seasons, which we're in right now. Um,
Hmm.
yes, it can get very complicated sometimes when you've got all of these contracts and you're looking ahead and you're like, but I need this size sofa or I need this size rug. We try and communicate ahead of time, and we will order furniture ahead of time and get that ready to go. Sometimes it magically works out. Oh, and removal comes up randomly, so we can
Right,
use some of those pieces and bring it to the
right,
next. So it's
right,
a little bit of a game, like a game of chess. But
right.
I think, Jeff and the team have been doing this for so long. We've got it down to a science. We did experience over the last couple of years, homes were on the market a lot longer.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that became a little bit challenging because we had, say, 40 homes that were staged, and you've got new contracts coming in. You're
Right.
hoping that maybe one of those the removals will come back, but they just stay on the market for a year. So it was a little bit of an interesting time. But we're kind of out of that again.
I think it's changing, although I do believe that a lot of the really huge houses that are up in the hills right now in the Bay Area are harder to sell than the ones that are walkable or that you can easily get to different commute options, what have you.
Yeah.
I've noticed that I have a lot of houses right now myself that have been on for a long time. And for variety, I think that insurance is playing into it. I think that price point is playing into it. I think that at the very top end of the market, people don't have to sell. I mean, the
Sure.
gentleman who owned the house that you just staged for me, he owns a palace in Germany. He lives in Germany. They were holding on to that house in Berkeley to visit it 1 month out of the year. Okay. And so the mindset is a little bit different with people that have that kind of money. And consequently, they get to a place where they're like, well, no, I just won't sell it now.
Right.
So you can be on the market for like 90 days with something, and then somebody would be like, oh, well, it doesn't matter, and there you are. And unfortunately, with those kinds of houses, you have to do the big magazine spreads.
Yes.
They're all crazy expensive. It's a fascinating world we have out there. I don't think anybody has any idea how much money realtors spend on marketing. If it's
Yeah.
if it's done right. I mean, that house that you'd staged, I had spent almost $30,000 marketing that house.
Wow.
Yeah, because it didn't sell right away. So,
Yes, that makes sense. That makes
yeah.
sense. We tend to work mostly in the luxury market at Green
Yes,
Cow,
I
a lot
know.
of the larger homes. But we do also do like condos in Soma. So we have a wide array of clients, styles of homes that we work with. But we are very well known for the larger homes.
Right. I mean, that's why, we came across you guys to work on this particular house because I wanted something that looked different than everything I kept seeing at every house I would go to. And
Wonderful.
and you work primarily in San Francisco and come over to the East Bay occasionally, Marin.
We are everywhere actually. We've done installs in Healdsburg, down Los Gatos, Atherton. We actually have a contract coming up in Alamo, so we're all over the Bay Area.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you must have to maintain a fleet of trucks and a whole group of people that do your moves and all of that kind of stuff as well.
Yes, we've got a team of full-time installers. We've got trucks and vans. And then we've got our project managers. We have our actual designers. We've got a team of 15 at Green Couch.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's really, I mean, I don't think anybody listening to this show understands the mechanics of all of these things. And also moving all that stuff on a temporary basis into that house with all those steps up to the front door. I mean, every time I would get to the bottom of the steps, I'd be like, huh, okay.
Yes. I give them props. I mean, they don't need to go to the gym because
No.
they're working out all day.
I had a house a long time ago that had belonged to briefly to Kevin Durant over in the Oakland Hills, and the house was over 10,000 square feet.
Okay.
And at one open house, I clocked that I walked 4 miles
Yes.
inside the house.
Yes. This is our team daily. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Well, you are a delight, and our time is just about up. How can people get a hold of Green Couch and you? Can you let us know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I just want to say thank you so much for including me in
Oh,
your podcast.
of
We are
course, you're
so
wonderful.
appreciative of agents like you. We're appreciative of all of our sellers that have become friends and clients. But yes, to get a hold of us, our website is www.greencouch.com. We also have a really amazing Instagram page, and that's at greencouch_design.
Great.
So those are like the most up to date with, stories and photos there.
I
So
love that.
follow us there. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. It's just a joy to get to know you a little bit, and we'll be working together again very soon. I have no doubt.
Thank you. I look forward to that, Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Realizations Podcast. I hope our conversation has shed light on the true essence of real estate and the people behind it. As we wrap up, I want to extend my gratitude to our listeners for their support and engagement. Your feedback drives the heart of this podcast, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing to the Realizations Podcast and leaving a review. Your support helps us reach more listeners and spread our message of positivity in the real estate industry. Until next time, remember to keep an open mind, embrace empathy, and always seek the good in every situation. I'm Andrea Gordon signing off from Realizations. See you next time.